Hi there, I'm Aaron McCool. I'm going to walk you through how I would create a play space designed for a 1-year-old child with phase 1 CVI. This is tailored to a child who can sit independently for a few minutes. They can rock on their hands and knees and they can roll over, but they aren't crawling yet. Though the fact that they're on their hands and knees and doing that rocking shows that crawling could be imminent, especially if we give them something worth crawling toward. The goal is going to be to encourage movement, engagement, and exploration while we keep in mind the child's visual and sensory needs. Before we dive into the specific play elements, let's start by addressing how reducing visual clutter can create a more accessible and engaging environment. And we're going to look at some key elements of the space. So first up is what I call the dark corner, not only because it sounds mysterious and cool, but also because that's just what it is. It's a dark corner. In the picture here, you can see there's a floor that has a black drop cloth. On the back wall, there is a large black poster board about 3 feet high by 4 feet wide. And then the second wall has a smaller black cushion about 1 foot high. I should mention that this play space that I'm considering is for in the home. I assume for most 1-year-olds, that's going to be where they spend the majority of their time. Even if they're in like a daycare situation, there's still going to be a majority of their time that's spent at home. So I wanted to make it there. The floor and both walls are covered in black to reduce visual clutter. Helps the child focus on specific objects. It can also be used as a calming space or an interactive zone, depending on what the child needs at the moment. Children with CVI can sometimes be very overwhelmed by too much visual noise. And so this gives them kind of a blank space where they can not have that sensory overload. I'd actually recommend extending the dark covering to both walls to further minimize the visual input instead of just having a smaller one on the side wall going the full 3 feet up. That wouldn't be strictly necessary as long as there's a visually quiet space, but it could give just a little bit more. They'd have that ability to look around without having to, all of a sudden, you're back into a visually overstimulating environment. There are some toys on the floor and on the walls in the picture. You would want to make sure that you have the flexibility to add or remove objects based on the child's stamina or their tolerance at that time. It'll make that space more adaptable and more usable in different scenarios. But overall, it's going to control the visual input. It's going to help build their visual attention without overwhelming the child. The next thing we're going to talk about is varying the flooring for a couple of reasons. First off, it can provide different sensory inputs, especially tactily. One of the pictures that I have here is a deep pile rug in a really bright red. If you get something like that in a preferred color, it's going to offer them a comfortable place to play. You're going to get that strong visual contrast, and you're going to get that tactile input that can be very important. You can also see there's a picture of like a thin rubber mat. Again, a very different tactile element, different color. It's going to show clear boundaries. And variations like these are going to help the child start distinguishing different areas and build early spatial awareness. It's going to just strengthen their ability to navigate their space independently over time. The next thing we're going to talk about is permanent spaces and furniture. And I did permanent in air quotes because this is a beanbag. And how permanent is a beanbag? It doesn't have to be technically permanent, but it is going to be a stable, consistent landmark for the child. If they are able to look around the room and see one thing that is always in the same space, when they find it, they will be able to start knowing where they are in space, even if they are having trouble differentiating other objects. Having that one clear landmark can help with that. Also, something like this is going to, that consistency is going to foster some independence and some confidence. Also, let's be honest, this is great for something like story time. It's a predictable spot associated with something that's routine and comfortable. And what I really like about this piece, it can be used in 2 different ways. When it sits up, it is a bean bag, but it sits upright like a low chair. Or if you lay it back, it basically becomes like a soft ramp. The back has a much lower profile, making it easier for the child to access as they start moving more independently. And that versatility is going to support early and later mobility and give them multiple ways to engage with their space. Also, speaking of those permanent fixtures, like something like a table can also be really good for that. And also that's going to provide them not only that landmark, but a table is going to give them a sturdy surface where they can start pulling to stand and cruising, which is where they do that kind of walking creep along something like a table. So it is going to support the transition from sitting to standing, and it's going to encourage early stepping. I know we're not there yet, but it is something that we should prepare for, because I mean, if they're sitting up and they're getting ready to crawl, it sounds like eventually they're going to get toward this, and it's good to be prepared for it. One of the keys is going to be to make sure that the table is visually obvious. You don't want it to blend into the background. So like, if you have like a beige wall, you don't want a light brown table. The one that I have here is bright yellow. I also have a picture of like some black pool noodles, which you can cut and put on the edge. This is going to not only make it safer, but also make it more, there's more visual contrast for the child, so they can see where the edges are. So the contrast, will make it easier for them to locate and navigate around it. That helps their spatial awareness and their independent movement. And then once they start using it, you can start positioning motivating objects on the table. So we can encourage engagement with those, standing practice, the reach, the guided reach, things like that. Next is going to be the tactile board. I didn't actually put together a picture of a tactile board. I put together some elements that I would think would go really well on there. And this is something that I got into kind of a rabbit hole on. There's so many things that can go on there. For instance, that diamond plated aluminum that you see on the back of like pickup trucks and things like that. You can get small pieces of that in bright colors, or you can get it in chrome if you just want the reflective, with not soft edges, but rounded edges so that they're not sharp. And they're actually not as expensive as I would have expected to be. There's a bright red square rectangle on this picture. That's actually high grit sandpaper. Places like Ace have colored sandpaper. So that can be an element you have on there. Fabrics come in all different colors, iridescent, highly reflective, all different kinds of textures. You can get like a velvet is going to be very different from a satin. There's ones on here that actually have kind of like, it looks kind of like bubble wrap. It has that raised bump to it. You can put together a board that the child can use. And if you have different colors and different textures, that's going to be a lot of interaction that they can get, sensory interaction with that. So there we go. The next one's going to be light up balls. And I think this is one of everybody's favorites as far as working, especially with kids with CVI. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, it's usually like a small plastic ball that has a flashing light inside of it. And that can either be turned on or manually, or you can hit it or bounce it and it'll turn the light on. If you get the ones that have like little spiky nubs on there, you get some extra texture. There's another picture on here that's called an O ball. And for those, it's a ball, but then the outside rubbery plastic part has a lot of holes in it. Those are usually the size of a nickel or a dime or so. And then the flashing light is in there and it's kind of bouncing around. So that gives you another tactile element. But then also for students that have difficulty with strength or fine motor skills, those holes are going to make it a lot easier to grab and manipulate. So if they're getting frustrated because they can't pick up another ball, this might be something that they are more likely to engage with and be more excited about and want to, do that guided reach toward. And then with this is going to be good for all kinds of things. If you get one of the ones where they hit it and it turns on, you get cause and effect understanding. There's fine motor skills with reaching for it. If you have a rolling ball, that's good for visual tracking. And these are all important for early hand-eye coordination and future functional vision. This next one, who doesn't love a disco ball? A disco ball, you can get ones that are self-illuminated. They have little LEDs that shine at them. It's going to add an element of movement and light to the space. Since CVI students often respond well to movement. The shifting lights can help build visual attention. And you can get ones that are either going to hang or go in an area where they can't necessarily reach the actual disco ball, and they just interact with the lights that are coming off of it. So you don't have to worry about safety as much there. This next one's a personal favorite. This is called a roadie. Now, what a roadie is a fairly large rubber toy. It's about 2 feet tall. It's a let's say horse. It's not a very accurate horse, but kind of a cartoon horse. And it's rubber, so you get that rubber texture. It's got this one is red and has a yellow saddle. The yellow saddle has a little bit different texture. It has some spots, those have a little bit different texture, so you get that. Once they start getting able to stand, they're not going to be necessarily to pull themselves up on roadie, but they can use roadie as a stable base to hold themselves on. He's heavy enough that he's not going to just tip, but if they fall either onto him or pull roadie onto them, I keep saying roadie as him because my daughter has one and roadie is a him here. Roadie's basically a giant rubber ball though, so if they pull roadie onto themselves, they're not going to hurt themselves additionally more than the startle of falling down. Later, it becomes a good toy because you get to work up to where they can get onto it. They can practice balance and movement and interactive play. It's great for gross motor development, practice weight shifting, confident movement. And again, that's down the road, but that doesn't mean it's a bad toy to introduce now. Another one of most people's favorites is the crinkle toys. Crinkle toys, they're lightweight, highly reflective, provide great auditory feedback. They're just like a foil ball and in bright colors. And so when you squeeze them, they make a crinkling noise. But like I said, since they're so reflective, they can be really good at getting visual attention. They come in all kinds of colors. You can use them like if you hang them in the dark corner and then you either flash a light on them or you crinkle them, you can give that auditory localization or the ability to find something visually. And then because they combine sound, texture, and shine, they're particularly engaging for students with CVI. Keeps their attention, encourages repeated exploration. One thing to keep in mind, these are often like a kitten toy, which means that sometimes you can find ones that are quite small. I would recommend staying away from anything too small, especially with like a 1-year-old who might still be in the things go to the mouth phase. You'd want to make sure that it's large enough that it's not a choking hazard. And as with anything, you'd want to keep an eye on them, make sure that they're safe. The last one that I want to show is it's a very simple one, metal kitchen implements. So everyday kitchen tools, like especially in stainless steel, bowls, lids, ladles, whisks, those everyday items make great play items. The bright reflections are going to catch the child's attention. The sounds they make when they're tapped or slammed into each other reinforce cause and effect. Whisks and ladles can also be really useful because they introduce an early extension of movement. If they're holding a ladle and they reach out and they whack something with it, they're going to start putting together, oh, I didn't hit a thing, but when I was holding this and did this thing, this happened. And that's going to be a very early but important foundational skill that can translate to using a cane or other navigation tools if that's going to be something that they end up doing. Also, you can get these fairly cheap. You don't have to get like an all-clad $150 stainless steel lid. You can go out and get these for like $3-4, and then just let the kid beat the heck out of them. All right, so overall, by creating a space that's incorporating a lot of visual, a lot of tactile, and a lot of auditory elements, we're building an environment that's going to encourage that movement. They want to get to things, they want to explore, they want to engage with them, and then eventually they'll want to be able to do that on their own. And that's really what we're trying to do, is teach them that they can move independently. Each piece in this setup is designed to support developmental milestones and inspire that spontaneous exploration. And what's great is that a lot of these elements can evolve as the child grows, ensuring that the space remains functional and engaging over time. So thank you very much for joining me in this, and I can't wait to see all of yours. Thank you.